friends, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany and today I am doing a reading vlog because I am reading a book that I feel like everyone except me has read. I think there's a few people maybe who haven't read it, but I think like all the booktubers have read it because it's kind of a booktube darling, and that book is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. So even though this is a super popular book, I'm going into it very blind. The only thing that I know about this book is that it is a sci-fi and that it deals very heavily with like class systems, and like the class systems are based on colors, and that's literally the only thing I know about this book at all. So I thought it would be kind of fun to document my reading experience of this book with you. I probably will have some spoilery thoughts as I'm reading, so if you haven't read this book, maybe you don't want to watch all this, or maybe you do. But like I said, I feel like a lot of people have read this. So I am mildly hesitant going into this book for two reasons. One of which being is that it's really beloved by a lot of people. And when something's like very hyped, a lot of times it does not live up to the hype for me. However, I do have a few close friends who absolutely love this book, and I have very similar taste in reading with them. So that gives me hope that it won't be super overhyped, because a lot of the books that are just like booktube darlings are not necessarily the books that I love. The other thing that makes me slightly hesitant going into this is the fact that it is a sci-fi. And if you've been around my channel for very long, you know that I'm not a big sci-fi reader. A lot of times I have a hard time getting into sci-fi books. Sometimes I feel like the science fiction aspect is just too technical for me to enjoy, or a lot of times when it's outer space sci-fi, which this one is, I have a hard time picturing in my head or kind of like making sense of the things the author is trying to convey or build. There are exceptions to this. I absolutely loved Brandon Sanderson's Skyward series so far, and I really liked Binti as well, although I never finished that series. I only read like the first novella. But other sci-fis that I've read, I haven't enjoyed, or I've outright DNF'd. So I am hesitantly looking forward to reading this. I am reading this with one of my subscriber friends, Dia, so that's really exciting. I'm really excited to be reading this with someone else so I can be talking about it and sharing my thoughts. And also I get to share my thoughts with all of you. So hopefully this doesn't end up being like a rant book and I hate it, because you probably don't want to watch an entire vlog of me hating something. So yeah, just stick around and we'll see what happens, I guess. Okay, so real quick, this is very like short off the cuff thoughts because I have just completed chapter 1. Do you remember the bookish pet peeve video I just posted? And how I said I hate books that are written in present tense? This book is written in present tense. So obviously I'm going to give it a chance because like I said in that video, I do like some books that are written in present tense. It's just not my preference and it makes it harder for me to get into. Also, the writing style is like super choppy. So this is probably not gonna be my favorite prose of all time, but I am very intrigued by the class system that Pierce Brown is introducing already. So that is making me want to read more. We'll see what happens. Finished chapter 7. So chapters 1 through 6 were like the first part, so I'm now one chapter into the second part, and I feel like the writing style did get better for me. Not that it changed, but that I adjusted to it more. One thing I'm like really impressed about with this story so far is that there is such a connection that I have to like the relationships in the story. So the main character, Darrow, is a red, which is one of the lower society people. So all the reds, their task is like to dig these caverns beneath the surface of Mars, and they're looking for like these pockets of hydrogen, I think, so that way they can have like this air to make the surface of Mars inhabitable. And then there are other colors. I think gold is like the highest one, and they actually like live in like luxury on Earth and whatever, and they visit Mars like sometimes. And then yeah, so there's like different levels. Gray as like guards and stuff, I think. Anyways, so there's different colors, different levels for different colors, and red is one of the lower ones. So Darrow, our main character, is married to a girl. He's only like 17, or no, 16. And I think she's like the same age or something. Maybe she's a little younger, I don't know. But like their relationship is so sweet. Like I love it so much. Like it just feels so pure and genuine, and like they really, really love each other. And so I am really enjoying like the relationships very quickly, and that relationship has like a lot of tragedy. So I don't know how spoilery I should get. But like when they were so sweet together, like I was loving the two of them together, and I was already like waiting for the hammer to drop. Like I knew something was gonna happen. Even from the back, I knew. So yeah, at this point, I'm kind of confused as to what's going on right now, because Darrow doesn't know what's happening right now. So obviously like that makes me confused too. So I'm trying to figure out what in the world is going on, and I don't really know where it's going from here. So it's really interesting. It's definitely like a shift in the storyline already, and I'm not even super far in. I want to say I'm like 50 or 60 pages in, but I can't remember. So yeah, I am like super fascinated with this at this point, and really interested to see where it goes. So I am about a quarter of the way through Red Rising at this point, and I'm so surprised by how much I am enjoying it. I have heard a lot of people say that they felt like the beginning of Red Rising was kind of slow, and I can kind of understand where they're coming from there, but I feel like it's perfect pacing for me as someone who kind of struggles to sometimes grasp sci-fi worlds. I feel like Pierce Brown is really taking his time to build this world, describe what it's like, explain the class system and all of that kind of stuff. Like at the point of the book I'm at right now, I think I just finished chapter 13. So right now Darrow is training and learning like basically to become a gold so he can infiltrate like the highest tier to bring about revolution and justice and all that kind of stuff. Although I think revenge is more primarily on his mind at this point. But they've had different people from different classes come in. Each one kind of like does a different thing. So like I think it's purple is like super creative, and so they had a purple person come in and basically like recreate him as a gold, and they've just had all kinds of different colors come in and do certain things that have to do with like his training to prepare him. So that's just been really interesting, and it's helped me get a better grasp on like what each color does and what their standing in society is in general. In some ways the colors kind of remind me like a little bit of like the districts in the Hunger Games, except that they like all live together, but each color kind of does a specific thing. So it's not just like, oh, you're this color, so that means you're ranked like fourth most important in the society. Like each color has a specific task and role to fulfill in the society. But it's not necessarily related to like exports, like the Hunger Games is with districts. But yeah, it feels like very dystopian as well as sci-fi, which I like. I really like dystopian worlds and dystopian books, so I am really enjoying this so far. Sitting in my car. My daughter is at archery practice right now, so I'm trying to get a little bit of reading done. I am creeping up on the halfway point of Red Rising and just really enjoying it. It reminds me of a lot of other books. Like I can kind of see some similarities to the Hunger Games in terms of pitting children against each other, and I can see that as well from like Ender's Game. It's kind of giving me some of those same vibes too. One thing I am enjoying is the fact that Darrow is kind of being forced to make these decisions as a gold and kind of be cruel like a gold in order to fit in. But the thing that I like, at least so far, is he definitely like hasn't lost his conscience or his heart, and he doesn't take it lightly, the things that he has to do. I'm really fascinated to find out where this is going to continue to go, because it's really interesting, like in this realm of the school where he's at, where he's training and stuff, the way that it talks about the landscape surrounding where they are, and then their specific house, because he's in like the house of Mars. They're all different like Roman gods. In his house, like it's a castle that they're in, which is really interesting. So it sounds a lot like Earth, even though they're on Mars, and even the landscape around them, there's like rivers and mountains and trees and stuff, and it sounds very much like Earth. So it's interesting because right now it kind of feels like a high-tech Earth more than it feels like Mars, which is quite a contrast from the beginning where, you know, he's under the ground and he's digging as a red, and that seemed very much more sci-fi-y. So it's just interesting how different like everything looks for the golds than it does for the reds. The training and stuff that's going on is just very, very interesting. Definitely like wasn't what I was expecting, and it wasn't what Darrow was expecting either. When you hear that someone's going to like a school or something, the first thing that I think of is, you know, like some sort of academia and actual like classes that you sit in, but this is obviously very different from that. So it's really interesting, and I'm really enjoying it. I feel like I'm saying that in every update, but I think I'm saying that because I'm surprised, because I didn't think that I would like any of it at all, and that it would be really hard for me to get into, especially since it's a sci-fi. But then also the fact that it's written first person present tense and is like a very choppy narrative. I was really like, the first chapter I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through this, but like it's so engaging to me. So once I could get past the writing style, which I did, I just had to kind of acclimate to it. But once I did that, it's been super interesting. I was talking to my friend who I am reading this with, and she was saying that she is afraid to get attached to characters because the world that Darrow is embroiled in right now is so brutal. And so you want to kind of get attached to some of his classmates because some of them are very personable. Some of them are not these cruel killer golds like Darrow is expecting, but they're kinder. And I guess, you know, it's hard to continually hate your enemy when you have interactions with them all the time and you kind of realize that they're people like you are. And I mean, some of the people in this gold class, or like in this house of Mars that Darrow is in, are like very brutal and born killers, but there's definitely some of them that aren't. And I totally agree with the sentiment that you're like afraid to get attached to people because it's such a brutal world and a brutal like schooling and everything. So you don't want to get too attached to people because they might not make it. Everything feels very up in the air. So gonna try to get a little bit more reading done before I go in and watch my daughter shoot. So I have officially passed the halfway point in Red Rising, and goodness, that bombshell about Titus, I did not see that coming. So did anyone else see that coming? Maybe you did. I'm not great at guessing surprise endings or anything like that anyway, so yeah, maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. But I was very surprised about that. I do feel like the book is a little more brutal than I was expecting. Not that it's gory, because it's not. There's just like a lot of like violence and sexual violence, which like the rape is off page, at least so far it has been. Not the most fun thing to read about. And it's a good lesson to Darrow as to what rage and revenge does. It's not pretty and it's not good, and it completely consumes you. And not only does it cloud your mission as to what you want to do, in like Darrow's case, but it makes you miserable and leaves you without friends. I mean, in Titus's case, the only friends he had were not friends at all, but people who were afraid of him. So I'm hoping that Darrow remembers this lesson. I do feel like he's taking things not in a vengeful light, but really trying to keep Eo's dream and example before him. So I hope he continues that. It is a super gloomy day here today, so I hope to get some more reading done today. But today is our homeschool co-op day, so we're gone all day. So we'll see how much more I get read. So I stayed up really late last night and finished Red Rising, and I am really happy that I read this book. I really liked the ending of it. I really liked Darrow's character growth. I just feel like he learned a lot about himself and a lot about like revenge, and that the people he felt vengeful toward were human beings too. I felt like there was he learned a lot about humanity of other people, because it's really easy to hate and demonize people who are part of a group when you don't know them at all. And that doesn't mean that all of the Golds were completely innocent or anything like that, and he still realizes that, but he realizes that there are so many of them that either their view of the caste system in general was just basically rooted in their minds and they didn't ever know to think any better, or, you know, some of them did. So I think that gave him hope in that. So my overall thought on this book, there were a lot of things that I liked about it. I really liked the world. I mentioned that I feel like even though this is a sci-fi, in a lot of ways it feels a lot more dystopian than it does sci-fi. At the beginning of the book, when we're with Darrow and he's like down drilling in the earth That feels very sci-fi, and it's easy to remember that he's on Mars and you've got all these like drilling equipment and all these things. And then, you know, once he is up with like the high reds and starts seeing like the rest of society and stuff, that felt more like a dystopian where they have like a lot of technology. Kind of reminded me of like the Capitol in the Hunger Games. So that was just kind of interesting. It felt more like it could have been taking place on Earth, more so than taking place on Mars. It was easy for me to forget that they were on Mars as a whole, especially because, you know, the only characters are humans, there's no aliens, which I'm fine with. That didn't bother me one bit. And then, you know, things that are referenced, like the different houses when they're doing the games, those are all Roman gods. So again, feels very human and earthly. I also really loved the cast system of the colors and the class tension between the different colors. I'm always fascinated by that kind of stuff in books, so that was a huge encouragement for me to read this book, knowing that that was part of it, and that didn't disappoint. And I really enjoyed the time that we spent before Darrow tries to get into this school, and learning just about the different colors and what their purposes are and how they serve the golds and all that kind of stuff. I just thought that was an interesting exploration. I also really loved how Pierce Brown treated relationships, particularly romantic relationships, but I also really liked how he did friendships too. But the romantic relationships, I feel like he just has a great treatment of marriage, especially like Darrow and Eo's marriage and how wonderful that was, even though the two of them were so young and their marriage was so short. I do feel like that was just really portrayed really well and positively, and actually made me love their relationship, even though they hadn't been in the book for that long. And then Darrow's grief over Eo too just felt so raw, and the fury and the vengeance that he experienced felt understandable, but I liked his growth to see that being filled with rage and vengeance doesn't really serve you, and how it causes you to like lose sight of what is actually really important. And I mean, Titus is a great example of that. But even just times where Darrow would completely like lose control and basically see red, there were times where it worked out okay for him and then times where it didn't. And so I thought that that was a really meaningful character arc. I also liked how the plot arc was at least partly resolved. I mean, obviously Darrow has a mission that he is on and more that he wants to do. But we were getting towards the end and he was still at the school and he's still trying to like take over and do these things. And I was kind of getting nervous. I'm like, are we going to end this book and this is not over and this is still going on? But it did wrap up, and I liked how it wrapped up, but I did feel like the last couple of chapters felt kind of rushed because we spent a lot of time with the characters when they were just kind of sitting and planning and trying to do things. And so the ending just felt like it came together really fast, and I wish that we had spent just a little more time with that. But I did like that that plot arc of him being at the school was resolved, so it's not like you have to read the next book to even find out how that finishes out. I feel like the book left me really wanting to see what happens next and wanting to see how the connections continue into the next book, because obviously there are some that will continue because of who he is apprenticed to at the end, but then, you know, he has all these relationships that he's built with people and showed them how to think differently about society and think differently about working together and earning loyalty and all those kinds of things that probably Golds really hadn't ever thought about before. So I'm just kind of wondering how that is going to play out in the next book. I'm really hoping that Servo will be in the next book. I feel like he probably will, based on kind of something that he has figured out about Darrow. I feel like that is going to come into play at some point. Things that I didn't love, other than like the semi-rushed ending. I didn't love the writing style, which I said that towards the beginning. I really did not love the choppy writing style at all. I don't like books written in present tense as much. But I settled into this one after probably about 2 chapters. I was okay with it. It wasn't bothering me anymore. But the choppiness at certain points all throughout, I was just kind of like not loving that. And then it was kind of funny because I was talking with my friend Dia, who I was reading this book with, and she was mentioning and saying like she wished that it didn't have quite as much bad language in it. And I thought it was kind of funny in this book anyways, because some of the bad words that they use are words that we do use currently, but there's a lot of words where he just he combines curse words together to make a new curse word to kind of like be a bad word in this world, which is fine, but it's really funny to me because he just combines 2 bad words that already exist. And so that didn't feel very creative to me. That felt kind of lazy. Like if you're gonna create a new curse word, then just create a new word or use a word that's not used for that. It just didn't seem all that unique. And then I also thought it was funny because like the bad words that the lower classes use are different than the ones that the higher classes use, but not really. Like the Reds, they say bloody damn all the time. Like that is like their number 1 curse word that they use all the time. And the Golds say gory damn. And I'm like, okay. Just didn't feel that different or more sophisticated or anything. It was just kind of silly, I guess. I forgot to mention a couple other things that I did like. I liked the female characters in this book because I felt like they weren't just caricatures. I felt like they were well fleshed out, and while some of them were love interests, that was not the only purpose. Even with Io, who was Darrow's wife and was really only existed as his wife, like she was so much more too. She was like the vision of the dream to have a different society. So it wasn't like she was just only like this superfluous, airy damsel in distress. That was not her at all. So I really liked that. Another thing that I noticed about this, and I did mention it, is that there are a lot of similarities between this book and other popular sci-fi / dystopian books. I saw a lot of resemblance between this book and The Hunger Games and also Ender's Game. And then I saw a lot of people compare this to Lord of the Flies as well, which I have not read yet. I hope to get to that one next year, but I do kind of know the basic plot point of that, and so I can see where people get that as well. So while there is a lot of similarities, I don't feel like it was just all like copy pasted. I feel like Pierce Brown really made this world like his own and had so much more to it than just that. But I think that there were some people that did think that he ripped too much off of other worlds and there were too many similarities. I disagree. I think that there were enough differences, but when you get into a book that's kind of sci-fi / dystopian, there's just a lot of tropes that you see commonly in dystopian books, and that's why they're dystopian books. So there are going to be similarities. I think one thing I've loved about this book is that I am not a huge sci-fi reader. I've mentioned that before. And this book was not heavy on the sci-fi, and I loved that about it. This book really felt a lot more like a dystopian than a sci-fi, which felt much more manageable to me and wasn't as confusing to me, because a lot of sci-fis just go too deep into details and I'm just lost and can't figure out what they're trying to do, can't picture what they're trying to explain to me, and that just like throws off my reading experience. It makes me feel like confused and like I can't connect to it as well when I can't picture what they're talking about. And this was definitely not that way. So if you are someone who is not quite as into sci-fi but you do like dystopians, I think that you would still really enjoy this book. So the question is, was Red Rising overhyped? And I don't really think so for the most part. If someone is telling me that Red Rising is like the best book that is ever written and completely revolutionary, I would disagree with that. I don't think, it's not like it changed my life or anything, but I really enjoyed it. I was not disappointed by it at all, and I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel. So if you have not read Red Rising, I hope that I did not spoil too much for you. If you did read Red Rising, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. I have heard lots of people say that Golden Sun is even better than Red Rising, so I would love to hear your thoughts, because if it just keeps getting better, that makes me even more excited to continue reading this series. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.